Okay, here is our second video, and what we're about to do is graph a couple of points. So I'm going to kind of color these points in with different colors. Let's do red and purple. But then we're also going to make something that is a bisector, which means it'll be in the middle, and it needs to be perpendicular. So we got a lot going on in just a handful of words. I'm going to also remind myself, like I said out loud, that bisector is in the middle, and that perpendicular is the slope that is opposite sine and reciprocal. So it has to satisfy those two things. All right, let's go ahead and plot our points and see where that leads us. So my first point at 5, -3 is going to be 5 to the right and 3 down right here. The next point is at -3, -7. So that's 3 to the left and 7 down. So it's going to be here. 7 down is 2 below -5. And as I look at these two kind of points, they seem to have a slope. I tried to draw a straight line there. It's pretty good. But let's look at this slope kind of as a box, because I'm going to cut this box, kind of fold it in half both ways like a piece of paper. I notice that my rise here is 4. And that my run is more than that. And if I'm not sure how to figure out how far it goes, if I'm going from -3 up to 5, that means I have a distance of 3 and a distance of 5. And that totals up to 8. Now I also notice that means each of these halves, let's kind of highlight like these half lines. Let's take that back. Let's do it in yellow here. Kind of like that. Actually, you know what? Let's match the color, because we said bisector was blue. So bisector is meaning to like cut these two measurements in half. And those intersect at this middle point right here. And that middle point has an x and y value. The x value in this case is 1. Accidentally deleted something, 1. And then the y value is -5. There's another way I could have found that middle value. Anytime you're trying to find the middle of something, you're really finding like what we call the average, where you add things up and divide by the number of things. So if I wanted to find the middle of the two x's, I'm going to add up those two things and divide by 2. And the two x numbers are -3 and 5, which becomes 2 over 2, or 1. So my middle x is 1. My middle y, I could have calculated with like a formula as well, where I add two things and divide by 2. My two y values are, we have a -7 and a -3. Put those together, that gives us -10, but we still have to divide by 2. And that still gives me the -5. So my x and y for this midpoint of the segment is going to be 1 for the x and -5 for the y. All right, but we have to kind of put this into an equation. And the equation that's kind of a go-to tends to be our point slope form. So if we do it in point slope, that's where we have y minus some value for y equals some value for slope times x minus some value for x. There are other equations we could use as well. We can do it in like a slope-intercept form. But let's see what we get from here. All right, I have y minus a y value. Well, my y value for the middle point is negative 5. My x value, because this is my y value, my x value over here with the x is 1. What I'm missing is my slope, my m slope. But this needs to be perpendicular. Okay, now back at this rectangle, I noticed that my slope of this line has a rise of 4 and a run of 8, and it is positive. I could rewrite that as 1 over 2. That's an equivalent version of 4 over 8. But I need to change that slope. The perpendicular slope would flip that. So perpendicular is going to be flipped 2 over 1 and opposite sign. The original slope was positive, so the perpendicular slope is going to be negative. So in here, I could put negative 2 over 1. Now, if I were to graph that, just to make sure it looks correct, I'm going to go through that point, but have a negative 2 over 1 slope. And in fact, it does look good. Those look like they make a 90-degree angle. In the end, what I need to type into a digital version of this test is this equation here, or something equivalent. If you graphed it and you noticed that there was an intersection point here at 0, negative 3, that could have told you that that negative 3 was like my b equals negative 3. So if you had written the equation y equals my mx plus b, and you filled in the b with negative 3 and my perpendicular slope of negative 2 over 1, this would have also been an acceptable response. There are other answers as well, so long as they are an equation that matches up for that line. All right, that's it for this video. We showed some ways to do it numerical calculations, but mostly depending on drawing a graph and making sense of it there. The graph is going to be hugely useful for these first couple of questions here.